Good afternoon. We're looking at 3H here, correlation and causation. Correlation does not always imply causation. There is always something else that's possibly going on behind the scenes. Some of these are maybe kind of morbid. So question 1, a study of primary school children aged 5 to 11 finds a strong positive correlation between their height and their score on a test of mathematics skill. Does this tell me that taller people are better at maths? What might cause you to come up with a different association, different answer? Okay, fine. Strong positive correlation between height and score. But do you know what else is also going on in the background here? What's generally true about kids who are 11 years old and kids who are 5 years old? Which group of kids are taller? The 11-year-olds. Alright, the 11-year-olds are older than the 5-year-olds and are therefore more likely to be taller than them. Do you know what there's also more likely to have had? More schooling, more education. So they are far more likely to have had time to study and learn and things like that. So if you give kids age 5 to age 11 the same test, of course the kids who are 11 years old are going to do better on it. Those 11-year-olds also just happen to be taller. Age, and therefore the amount of mathematical experience they have, is more likely to be the reason why taller kids were doing better, because they were generally older and therefore had more practice doing maths. Question 2. There is a clear positive correlation between the number of churches in a town and the amount of alcohol consumed by its inhabitants. Does this mean religion is encouraging people to drink? What cause might counter this conclusion? Alright, in most of these cases, there is going to be no link between thing A and thing B. There is always another thing in the background. Alright, in this case, you are talking about the number of churches in a town and the amount of alcohol consumed by that town's inhabitants. A town of 1,000 people is going to drink a lot less alcohol than a town of 20,000 people. The town of 20,000 people is also much more likely to have more churches. There is no distinct link between the number of churches and the amount of alcohol, but the size of the town is the common cause for what's going on here. Alright? A larger town is going to imply a larger population. A larger population is going to imply much more drinking. A larger town is also going to imply many more churches. The people who are going to church aren't necessarily the same people who are off drinking. There is a strong positive correlation between the amount of ice cream consumed and the number of drownings that happen each day. Now notice it doesn't say drownings at the beach. The question also says, does this mean eating ice cream at the beach is dangerous? What common cause might explain this association? Now, ignoring the fact that they say you shouldn't eat 30 minutes after swimming, or go swimming 30 minutes after eating, etc., because of cramping and stuff like that, the data is saying that the more people, or the more ice cream that people eat, means there's more drownings happening. I mean, it's kind of a silly conclusion to reach, but the data supports that idea. However, what is also likely going on is weather conditions. All right, what generally happens? What are you more likely to be at risk at on really, really hot days? Things like heat stroke, fainting, etc. And if that happens to you while you're in the water, need I say more? All right. The weather going on in the background, the weather that causes people to want to go swimming on the beach, and the weather that also makes people want to eat ice cream are generally the same types of weather. I mean, I clearly like eating ice cream no matter the weather. I also don't like going to the beach no matter the weather. Now, this next one, there's a little bit more of an understanding of a link going on here. The number of days a patient stays in a hospital is positively correlated with the number of beds in the hospital. Can it be said that bigger hospitals encourage patients to stay longer than necessary just to keep their beds occupied? What common cause might counter this conclusion? Believe me, hospitals want people in and out as fast as possible. All right? The longer that they are there means that they have less capability to actually treat other people that come in. This is especially important in all of these times. However, when you think about it, if someone is in a severe amount of distress, like a car accident or a serious illness, where are they more likely to go? They are much more likely to go to one of the larger hospitals that have the larger facilities, the more equipment, the more specialized doctors, etc., to treat that illness or that injury. Therefore, the more serious the illness, the longer you are likely to need to spend in hospital. All right? So, the bigger hospitals generally work with with more serious illnesses which require a longer stay. The common cause are the types of patients treated at the hospital. The doctors are not trying to keep people in hospital just to keep the beds full. Because again, they want them out as quickly as possible. There's also a relationship between the length of stay in a hospital and the likelihood of getting a superbug like Staph aureus, golden staph. Question 5 talks about a correlation between smoking rates and heart disease across a group of countries. All right. Now, this is an example of a confounding variable. Much like the ice cream question and the beach before, the confounding variable is actually the weather. In here, people who are much more likely to smoke and much more likely to have heart disease are also people who are much more likely to have poor diet or are much older, because smoking is generally done by older people, because us young people know the risks, they know the dangers. So in this case, it's much more likely to be the age of the person involved, because an older person is just generally much more likely to have heart disease than a younger person. Young people very rarely get heart disease. All right. Now, there is indeed a link between smoking rate and heart disease, and it is entirely possible that the smoking caused the heart disease. This is an example of when your coefficient of determination might come into play here. All right. Question 6. There is a strong correlation between cheese consumption and the number of people who died after becoming tangled in their bed sheets. What is the most likely explanation for this correlation? There isn't one. There is literally no conceivable reason why eating cheese might make you more likely to get tangled in your bed sheets. This is an example of a spurious correlation. This is entirely a coincidence. This is entirely a coincidence. All right? A spurious correlation is generally caused completely by coincidence. It just happens to be that way. All right? Again, you could make all sorts of weird data collection and find similar things like this. For example, the amount of butter consumed by a population is almost perfectly in lockstep with the divorce rate in the US state of Maine. All right? That doesn't mean butter causes divorce. It's just a coincidence. Coincidences happen. Last question. Strong positive correlation between the number of fire trucks attending a house fire and the amount of damage caused by the fire. Does the number of fire trucks actually cause the damage? No. The more serious the fire, the more fire trucks are generally required to attend. The more serious the fire generally means the more damage that fire is going to cause. All right? The common cause that is making that correlation true is how powerful the fire is. All right? You can have a very, very big fire that only needs 1 or 2 trucks to put out. But there are other types of fires that generally involve hot burning chemicals and things like that. Like there was some fires at a waste disposal plant that took ages to put out because of just the fuel that was being consumed by the fire. All right. The larger the fire, the amount of damage, the more damage it's going to cause. All right, and that's why that association might be observed, but that's the explanation for that. Just because you have five fire trucks show up outside your house doesn't mean that that's going to be 5 fire trucks worth of fire to actually fight.